Welcome everyone to Life Sciences Fueling Purposeful Innovation. My name is Gary. I'm the program manager and experience designer at Venture Cafe Philadelphia. And we have an amazing session in store for you all. So first of all, we want to thank our sponsors, Independence Blue Cross and BPHL Innovation Fest, for sponsoring this session of diverse experts who are going to be discussing the emerging opportunities for innovators, educators, and support organizations to create a better future for all through innovation in life sciences. So I'm going to introduce all of our amazing panelists. And I would like to remind everyone that if you're an attendee, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to use the chat, throw them in there, and towards the end, we'll have a Q&A. Where either myself or someone from the team will read your questions out loud, or you can feel free to unmute yourself when we call on you and you can ask your question aloud. So to get started, I'm going to introduce Tia Lyles-Williams. Tia holds degrees from Howard University, Full Sail University, and the University of Southern California. And as an African-American woman and member of the LGBTQ community, Tia is the first to own and lead a biotechnology and biopharmaceutical manufacturing company called Lucas Pi Bio. And Lucas Pi Bio's mission is to lower the cost for biotherapeutic drugs, reduce time to market, and provide high-quality employment opportunities for underserved communities. This includes creating a pathway for the approval of more biosimilars and biobetters, aka generics for biologics that are currently being developed by emerging R&D firms and small biopharmaceutical firms. This pathway will allow Lucas Pi Bio to change the narrative and face of the biotechnology industry to one that promotes and illustrates real-world diversity, inclusion, and equity and equality. Thank you for joining us, Tia. Next up, we've got Phil Brooks. Phil Brooks is a native of West Philadelphia and attended Girard College High School. He then attended American International College in Springfield, Massachusetts, where he received his BS in biology. Returning to Philadelphia, he joined the education-based AmeriCorps program, City Year Philadelphia, where he served as a senior program manager and led over 200 18 to 24-year-old young adults in full-time volunteer service. After a 10-year commitment to City Year, he joined the Mayor's Office of Education as the U.S. 2020 Program Manager of STEM Initiatives. Later, his work transitioned to the Commerce Department's Talent Development Unit, and finally to the Office of Workforce Development, where he oversaw the City of Philadelphia's citywide STEM initiative that engaged, connected, and convened citizens in the region. And I'm very happy to say that he is now the Director of STEM Workforce Partnerships for the University City Science Center and is tasked with connecting and building partnerships with STEM employers to ensure job placement of West Philadelphia residents. Thank you very much for joining us, Phil. Next up, we have Dr. Tomoyoshi Koyanagi. Tomo is serving the University of Tsukuba as a professor of the Faculty of Medicine and leads the research studio powered by Spark as a training program for translational research and entrepreneurship. He also engaged in joint venture projects to facilitate healthcare innovation together with the Kyoto University Hospital. And prior to his current positions, he was a business development manager at Life Technologies Japan in the regenerative medicine field and an R&D manager at Karna Bioscience and Cyfuse. He was trained as a biochemist and started to work with startups while he was at the Stanford University School of Medicine as a postdoc. And he started the Spark program at Kyoto University in alliance with Stanford University and expanded those experiences to the Tsukuba area to create a startup ecosystem. And I thought what was super cool on your LinkedIn is that Tomo's lifetime goal is to create a seamless ecosystem from basic science to clinical application in Japan. And for that purpose, which is our theme, he is currently making huge efforts to discover early stage technology and consult scientists to develop their projects to be innovative products for the community. Thank you for joining us, Tomo. Last but not least, we have Gervan Williams, holding an MBA in strategic leadership from the University of Delaware, Gervan is an accomplished biopharmaceutical and biotechnology product development professional with more than 15 years of experience. He's attained credentials as a Howard Hughes Research Fellow, Delaware Biotechnology Research Fellow, and an NIH Research Grant Awardee. And he's received much recognition for his dedication to science. And as an NIH-funded research fellow with the Nemours Biomedical Research Institute, Gervan performed exploratory research in neuroscience and Parkinson's disease, with his work being published in scientific peer-reviewed journals and presented at internal symposiums and major scientific conferences. And Gervan currently serves as a consultant with the Latham Biopharm Group, which provides the insight, knowledge, and network to unite teams and technologies in the life sciences. Thank you for joining us, Gervan. All right, clearly we have an all-star panel of experts in life sciences. So let's go ahead and jump into it. For our panelists, like I said, I have a list of questions, but I definitely want this to be an engaging conversation between all of us. So if any of our panelists have questions for other panelists, feel free to build on what they said, dive deeper. We have this unique opportunity to learn from one another, and you're all doing amazing work around the world. So I want to make sure we can use this time appropriately. So if we could get started and go to each of our panelists, starting with Tia, could you share with us a little bit of your background story? Like, how did you even get involved with life sciences, and how did you become the founder and CEO that you are today?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I can literally say I came in kicking and screaming. My parents recognized right away that science was an industry for me. I actually went into Howard University undecided my first year, taking all the useless classes you can name just to figure out what was going on and what I wanted to get into. And then I took my intro to biology class at Howard University, and then from there I was like, okay, I guess I give science a try. So then I was on the at that time for med school track, and so at Howard they have a program that you have to speak with an advisor for any type of pre-professional program. So if it's a lawyer, if it's a doctor, any of those types of things, they put you with an advisor. And the first thing she said to me, she said, "You sure you want to be a doctor?" I said, "Yeah, I want to be a surgical oncologist." And she said, "Well, you got a lot of business insight. I don't know if this is going to be for you, because when you become a specialized doctor like that, you're going to be in heavy demand. You're not going to have time to start these businesses that you want to start." So fast forward, did some internships at NIH and Walter Reed. Walter Reed turned into my first real job. Prior to that, I did have a work study. And I worked at the Howard University Cancer Center, so I got exposed to clinical trials and management of patients on those trials. And then when I did the internship at NIH and later on the job at Walter Reed, that's where I got all my benchtop experience. And so later I went into corporate and started a Human Genome. So I've been in this industry, I think it will be 20 years by the end of this year that I've been working in this industry, and I worked at all facets. So benchtop research, developing large-scale processes for biological drugs, actually performing the manufacturing operations, leading a team with a role in management. And then later on, starting to get into, submitting documentation for IND and BLAs. And then that led me to get my degree in regulatory. Before that, I got a degree in business. And so I just kind of took it from there. And one of the things that I noticed throughout my whole career was that one, there was a lot of stuff going on in biotech and clinical trials, but as people of color, or specifically the Black community, did not have access to these trials, and the decisions to make drugs or to put these particular drugs in commercial market, for example, for lupus, was primarily based off the astronomical numbers and how it affected African Americans, particularly African American women. I actually was making a drug for that, and believe it or not, all the women or people included in the study were Indian women. They did not have any African Americans included in that study at all. And so I looked at that and I put that in my pocket. And then the next thing I knew, I started looking around. There wasn't a lot of us in the industry, especially in management. It is still very much, unfortunately, that way today. If you go to any big pharma company, small pharma company. 99.9% of the people on the manufacturing floor are Black and brown. There's only been one location I've traveled. I've worked in New Hampshire, California, Maryland, you name it, I've been there, DC. And so when I went to work in New Hampshire at Lonza, that was the first time that I saw 99.9% Caucasian Americans working on the manufacturing floor. But then there was one caveat. They had contractors to do all their cleaning of the facilities, housekeeping around the office area, so-called you. And each one of them was a person of color, Black or brown. So it hadn't changed much. It was just a different dynamic because it's a different state. And so I took that and put that in my pocket. And so I wanted to make a change. The next thing was I hit a ceiling. I didn't get any farther than senior manager in manufacturing. And at that point, it was more desk heavy because I worked at Jazz Pharmaceuticals in Philadelphia. They're a virtual small biotech company. They outsource everything. And so when I hit that ceiling, I thought it was the perfect time for me to step out and start my own company. I already had things written down. I had been working on it the whole time. I was getting my master's at University of Southern California in regulatory. And so that's kind of where I started and why I started and where I'm at today.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you, Tia. There was a lot shared. I think we got to come back to some of the things that you mentioned: access, exposure, and internships and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna put that in the parking lot. We're gonna come back to that a little bit later. Let's go to Tomo next. Tomo, could you share with us a little bit about your origin story into life sciences and how you got to be where you are now?
Okay, yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a very exciting moment for myself. Last year, I missed the chance to join the Bio Philadelphia. So yeah, this is one of the opportunity to get interactive with you guys. Very happy to be with you. So I started my career as, from the undergrad, was engineering in the fermentation biology. So I have many friends who are working for like a beer company or sake, other companies. So in the COVID-19 situations, one of my friends, actually she is working for this Santry, Japanese brewing company. She's making the spirits, but she shifted that for the making ethanol for the sterilization. So those kind of things. My background is more about engineering or programming, way of thinking. But I was amazed with the yeast, the very tiny bacteria, not bacteria, but anyway, cell. So I started to work on the protein kinase in that tiny organism. And then after I started PhD thesis, I realized the same kind of mechanism is adopted for the drugs. As you know, the like kinase inhibitors are popular in the cancer biology and the cancer treatment. So, well, maybe I can do something more than just tasting beer. So I decided to go to Stanford University to be trained more about the cell biologist. But the Stanford University is very famous in the startup companies, venture or ecosystem, as you know. So I was so amazed and decided to jump into that field, like dark side of the biology, more about the biotech business. And when I come back to Japan, the situation was totally different. Probably because of the Japanese people are so conservative, not so many people willing to start any small companies. So entrepreneurship, the word of the entrepreneurship was not popular around that time. So I joined a couple of companies, including Life Technology, US company, and I learned regenerative medicine. The new technology still coming from the academia. And the transformation from the basic science to the clinic, I had a many struggle. There's too many rules, which is not meaningful for Well, around that, like 10 years ago, we adapted all the regulations in the pharma and medical device to regenerative medicine, which didn't work. But we decided to work on that, and eventually, Japanese government decided to change the law to regulate that. So through that experience, well, I feel like I can do something more than that. So I decided to go back to academia. So I started Kyoto Spark at the Kyoto University, and now working on the University of Otsukuba to run the research studio program, which is a national-wide activity to support entrepreneur in the biotech field. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Tomo. Thank you. We will definitely be coming back to hear more about the Spark program. And with that being said, let's go to Phil next. Phil, can you share with us a little bit about your origin story?
Sure, absolutely. I'm a big comic book fan, so when you said origin story, that just went to so many different directions. So I'm originally from West Philadelphia. Grew up in a single parent household. Was raised essentially in a shelter, and had an opportunity to go to a prep school just through happenstance. And I think that was a turning point, I think, in my life. And that primarily set me on the path to the things that I'm doing right now. I've loved science from a young age to even now. And I'll tell you, my colleagues will tell you, if it has some type of like science component or chemistry or biotechnology, I'm all about it. I want to learn more about it. I want to be more about it, and I want to do more about it. So I had a chance to go to Gerard College. Gerard College was a fantastic opportunity for me. And then I completely left Philadelphia altogether, primarily just because I wanted to explore, do a little bit more things outside of the state. And I went to Massachusetts, got a biology degree, and really fell in love with like immunology and microbiology, and had a strong passion for some of those like main subjects, specifically within the lab. So a lot of my time was spent talking with my professors about, laboratory sciences, what things are needed for X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. All these conversations happened. All the while, I completely had my, after college plan in place. I was going to be an optometrist. No one was going to tell me otherwise. I had everything situated. I took my optometry admissions tests, which is similar to the MCATs and the dentistry admissions tests. I didn't do that great on the physics part the first time, but I took it again and nailed it on the second time. So I came back to Philadelphia and was going to attend the Pennsylvania College of Optometry. And in that first week, I got kind of like my first bill. And for me, my roadblock to not being an optometrist right now was finances. I couldn't pay for school. Like there was no other way for me to do so. And at the time, the phrase, I wish I knew then what I know now, things may be a little bit different. But at that time, City of Philadelphia was very big in the region. And a lot of it focused just on education. So working with youth, working with middle school students and high school students, and getting them really focused on math and literacy specifically. So I joined, I said, they're gonna give me this education award. I'm gonna get some money. I'm gonna go back to optometry school. And then I joined City year one, and then was there 10 years later, primarily just because I love young people. I love the innocence of young people. I love the bluntness of young people, especially high school students. And I think the high school kind of time was when I started to realize a bunch of things, right? But one thing I realized over a lot of other things was they didn't know what they want to do as a career. They were not exposed to some of the opportunities that we know about. And then moving forward from their perspective, it was really about, let me be what I can see. And what they could see was media. They can see basketball players, they could see lawyers, they could see doctors, but all these other roles and all these other opportunities were just kind of hovering around them for the taking, but they didn't have any access to it. They weren't able to connect with it. So I left City Year and joined the Mayor's Office of Education. And really that role was specifically about connecting STEM companies and STEM organizations to youth. And we did this in a variety of different ways. Science fairs, we had speakers come out to schools, we had students go out to locations. And I think from there, I transitioned into the Commerce Department, where they're really about business and bringing a lot of businesses to Philadelphia. The Commerce Department really opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, small, medium, and large, really want to be able to give back, but they don't have the means or the necessary infrastructure to do so. So a large part of my job was connecting them with youth. I'm at the Science Center now. I've been here since April of 2019. And I taking all that professional experience and driving it into a focus of young adults and adults was a different task for me. So taking the STEM ideas, the STEM careers and STEM opportunities, and kind of building bridges for adults who are looking for these opportunities has been something I've been really proud of and really have been driving home. So we specifically are looking at life science companies currently. We do want to branch off into technology and engineering and mathematics and all those other things. We do have to start somewhere, but I think the biggest thing for us is, being able to build trust with the communities that we're working with and being able to build trust with the companies that we're asking, hey, take a chance on this person who may not have a 4-year degree, who may not have an associate's degree, but have years and years of experience in retail work or customer service work or any other kind of like very, very specific category where they meet people and they talk to people. One of the biggest things that I'm super proud of is recently we concluded our 2-week pilot program, which I'll probably get more into a little bit later on with other questions. But something that specific program really started to open my eyes to what the possibilities are in the Philadelphia region, specifically within life science.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Phil. We will certainly be coming back to that. Thank you again. All right, Gervan, would you be so kind as to share your background and how you got into life sciences and biotech?
And are you sure? It might take longer than Phil has, but I'll try. So if you can't tell, I do have an accent. So I was born in Jamaica, and in Jamaica, there's a few routes you can go if you really want to get to the top, because everything is paid. Secondary school, college if you want to go. So the number of folks who actually end up going to college is very, very slim. So I passed my exam to go to high school, which basically high school in Jamaica is equivalent to college here. Trust me on that, right? So I passed, and then for some reason, the State Department of the United States decided to give me a visa to come to the United States, right? Which I thank them for. So I left Jamaica at that time with my mindset on the stars. I mean, I was, sort of a technical person interested in like physics, interested in engineering, and all of these things. In fact, you can attest, my mom can attest to this, that I built her first kitchen and bathroom, so something like that. So I was really focused on that technical aspect of, what can I do to sort of change the world in an immediate sense, right? Something you can see, because you can build things, with your hands, you can basically see it as you do it. But when I came to the United States, I was trying to see how I can expand on that in different areas. So, when I went to college, I went with the idea of, again, physics, look to the stars. What can I do with physics? How can I look into that area of understanding the unknown, right? And so I went to Florida. I started there at FAMU. It didn't last long because I really didn't like the heat of Florida. So I left there and I went to Ohio and focused on this physics again. And I was introduced to a research project that really opened my eyes into, sort of the field of what sort of life science research is. But I didn't really do much with that. It was just a small 1-semester opportunity. So I visited Philadelphia on an internship and pretty much fell in love with the area. So I decided I'm going to come to this region, and I came to the University of Delaware. Just decided overnight I'm going to the University of Delaware. But when I went to the University of Delaware, that was the moment. I mean, the University of Delaware just exploded in my mind with opportunities of how to do research. It's a research-oriented university. So I got an internship in Dr. Pat DeLeon's lab. She's a Jamaican like myself, just absolutely ambitious Jamaican. Don't mess with her. I mean, she's just absolutely amazing. And I decided to get another internship in a plant biology lab, and decided not to sleep for an entire semester. So with the two of those, genetics lab and her lab, I learned sort of what I could do with research, what I could do with understanding of science, and that's when I decided, okay, I gotta focus on how I could do more, make changes in the world doing research. So I spent my time at the University of Delaware and just basically did as many internship and research I could. I just asked any professor if they need someone in their lab, and I just, pretty much just did as much as I can. Then when I graduated from there, I decided to go to Canada. There's a professor there who was a friend of another professor I was working with at the university, and he invited me to come there and do some work in his lab just as an exploratory research in sort of bioengineering. I went there I just decided to go there again. My love for science, I just packed my things and I went there as well. And it was just an amazing experience there. Then I spent 2 years doing research on Parkinson's. I mean, it was once again a decision I made that this is interesting. I just want to see where it would go. And so I did another 2 years again on research on Parkinson's disease. And that was a culmination for me. That was the idea of how science actually impact change, because Parkinson's disease, if you're not aware, is really a debilitating disease. It is really devastating if you have anyone who has it. There is no cure at the moment for it. And so that was something that for me was very impactful, because I could see, where I was, for example, I was doing it at the Moores at the time. Air DuPont Hospital is still there in Delaware. But you can sort of see how, a disease and what you do can sort of lead to or impact, let's say, an outcome. There was a goal we had. There was a goal I had in my mind as to learn as much as I can to actually do something about this disease. But obviously, at that age, I did not know that. I'm naive to think that research is sort of a short-term thing. But in reality, research is is really a long-term investment, and it really takes a lot of effort to do that. And so, I decided after that I'll enter industry. So I went to start my industrial career at Cephalon. I'm not sure if you're aware. Cephalon was a pretty nice biopharmaceutical company in Westchester. It no longer exists. It was purchased and acquired by Teva. And so that organization to me was one of the best. I still look at it when I try to explain to people sort of the way an organization, when it comes to research, when it comes to a purpose, when it comes to fulfilling the scientific community's dream of places to work. And so that kickstarted my industrial career, and I stayed in industry ever since then, working on multiple projects in different arenas, from the discovery side, the development side, and then later on I transitioned over to the business side, so I could actually see more or less how what I was doing, how it impacts the world in that sense, and make a difference in terms of shaping the organizations, whether it's its financial direction, its goals, mission. So that leads me to where I am now, in the sense that I have all of that work I've done in exploring where I could go in terms of my life science pursuit and my goal in industry, as well as seeing where the organizations themselves are going and see how I can impact that from the larger sense and larger purpose. And so you'd say I'm pretty lucky to sort of be able to see these companies and organizations and the ecosystem from all levels. And at this point where I am with LBG, it gives me that opportunity, because once again, this organization interacts with like the government entities, so I see that side of things as well. We interact with the organization, the research institutions, and we often interact as well with the other stakeholders that are impacted. So I get a very nice wide view of the entire system right now, and I would say it's an amazing time to actually be making a difference and innovating and doing work in this arena, because there's really a lot of potential out there. There's a lot of things to do, and there's a lot of work to really shape how the future of this industry is, and the future of how life science and purpose and pursuit of cures and and solutions for some of the most devastating diseases out there. So it's been a great career for me, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm very happy to sort of be in this space and to tell you about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Gervan. You mentioned a lot about impact being very important to you. So with that being said, again, I want to make sure that each of you has the opportunity to learn from one another. So my quick questions are going to be for Tomo, could you explain a little bit more about the Spark program that you started, And then it would be great to hear from Phil about his programming as well. And if there are opportunities to learn from one another, you know, what are sort of best practices? Because I think, you know, as we look at our differing innovation ecosystems, there may be some things that we can adopt from one another to continue to empower our community. So Tomo, could you share more about Spark?
Okay, yeah. First of all, yeah, I realized why I was called up for this session because, well, we Japanese didn't distinguish the like a blue collar or white collar jobs. Even in the factory, you may know the word of Kaizen, which is created by Toyota industry, and then they are very creative, not like innovation itself. But they started to have the well innovation in the manufacturing side. So, but we have to learn from what we did like 50 years ago. Now, we Japanese people and the company doesn't have that much about how we can make a creative job. Even though we have many titled people who has the creative director or creative something. So we have to learn how we can make things change happen. And then the Spark program itself was started in 2006 by Professor Moshi Rosen from Stanford University, and she was struggled with the many, like more than 100 patents were not licensed out to the community. And science was just science, not seeking any opportunity to how they can utilize those kind of technologies. So through her own experience in the startup biotech company, she started to do some mentoring system for that. And of course, as you know, around the year 2000, people from the D school at Stanford University started design thinking. So like that as a theme of this session, probably the Spark is not the target-driven innovation system, but we are providing many opportunity to talk to many professionals, and probably design thinking is providing some needs. Well, from our side, alternative medical needs, but we're trying to bridge those two systems at the University of Tsukuba. And we also hired somebody who already have the experience in biodesign, and Spark is from the technology driven. So we are now struggling how we can merge those technology driven and needs driven innovations. And in our system, we have like 50 mentors who has experience in regulatory or manufacturing, of course, science and contract. Many mentors from the different field is giving the mentoring for the startup companies. But as we have limited number of entrepreneurs, many scientists come to us, but very limited people who has experience to run the company is coming to us. So next, our challenge for the next time is that we try to attract more business people who working together with us. So that will be the collaboration with the reason to collaborate with CIC or Venture Cafe Tokyo.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Tomo. Looking forward to the future partnerships and collaborations for sure. All right, so let's hear from Phil a little bit about his programming, and then I would love to hear from Tia a little bit about sort of your view on the programs we're talking about, and sort of like the gaps that you've seen in your experience and what might need to be done to create more amazing founders like you in this space.
Awesome. So I'll continue the discussion a little bit. So the BULB Workforce Development Program, so the acronym BULB, Building and Understanding of Lab Basics, was really designed for the intention of doing exactly that, either reskilling or continuing the education of individuals that may have 4-year degrees, that may not have 4-year degrees, but are looking into getting into quote unquote like the STEM industry, more specifically the life science industry. I really like what Tomo mentioned in terms of building the bridge between kind of like two really big entities. I think over the past year and some change, that's been a part of my job, building a bridge between the community and what communities are actually looking for and what they need, and then what companies are looking for and what they actually need, right? I look at it from the community side and say, we can be well-intentioned all we want, right? We can continue to put programs out there all we want, but if they're not benefiting the community in a way that actually impacts them in the long term, that helps them connect with opportunities, that connects them with additional opportunities or management or director or executive director opportunities, then we're not doing justice to the people that we say we are serving, right? So with the Bold Workforce Development Program, we partnered with eClose Institute. Amazing human beings. I love the people there. They actually did the training for the participants in different like lab basic skills. So we focused on microscopy, we focused on gel electrophoresis, we focused on DNA isolation, and we focused on basic lab safety. 4 things out of maybe 10 or 12 like really, really big chunks of information that employers were telling me that they would want from some of their people, from either lab technicians or whatever roles. So we focused on those 4, and we sent them essentially what kind of like boils down to as a lab in a kit, like a lab in a box. So each participant had a lab in a box. They had centrifuges, they had gel electrophoresis equipment, they had pipettes, they had all these wonderful things. And as we were going through the 2-week training program, it was really, it wasn't more about, it was about the actual skills and the actual hands-on component, but it was also about, hey, you are a parent with 2 children during the pandemic. You may not have thought about science in a billion years. Now you had to do kind of homeschooling for your kids, and now you have this resurgence of liking science, or this resurgence of liking this this specific field that you didn't even know you had in you, or that you didn't really like. And part of the benefit to the program was another thing that Tomo mentioned, was the mentorship aspect. We reached out into the life science community and we said, hey, we have this amazing group of people who are looking to do things very differently. We need mentors. And we reached out to some of our partners, and we have amazing mentors from Century Therapeutics. We have amazing mentors from Integral Molecular. We have mentors from Comcast. And I think this really kind of hits home with it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this goes across all generations, all ages, all genders, all racial, all of that, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And there's been too many times where a lot of the high school students I worked with in the past, they didn't know anyone. They knew their teachers, they knew the people in their neighborhood, but they didn't know that person that could potentially get them an internship opportunity, or that could have them work in the field that they have interest in, right? And I think that's part of our work right now, being able to build those bridges, right? And being able to connect with mentors who have other resources. Ideally, ultimately, it's to get job placement within this field, within different aspects of the life science community. But ultimately, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you, Phil. Tia, looking forward to your thoughts on all
Tomo and Phil definitely hit on points that I'm all about as far as access and exposure concerning the science industry. However, there are some things that we still need to work through. And I think one of the main things that we haven't touched upon is making sure that training is actually reflective of what's happening in the market with these companies. So sometimes, the training is good for the lab stuff, it's great, but depending on what training program you go through, they may not actually have the realistic lab tools that we use today. Most people probably don't know, there's still some old school stuff as far as gel electrophoresis, PCR, centrifugation, still some manual stuff. But when it actually comes to if a molecule is viable, meaning is it really going to work? Can we actually cost effectively scale it so that the patients have access to it in clinical trials in the commercial market? Then that's a whole different ballgame and a whole different set of instrumentation that is actually a little bit more automated than most people would even be aware of. And so with Lucas Pi Bio, part of our mission is to make sure that we work with underserved communities and give them access and training for these job opportunities. And so we have a direct collaboration partnership with Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing. They have licensed one of the only respected national certifiable training programs from NIBRT, the National Institute of Research and Biotechnology and Training. So Jefferson University is the only one that has a license to that program. And they train you on, sorry, phone ringing. They train you on not only just biomanufacturing operations, so working with the big equipment such as bioreactors or chromatography skids, but they also have a program that trains you on lab technique using the small scale equipment such as glass bioreactors, or I'm sure some of you are still familiar with the what are called mini preps for the little chromatography resins that you use in a lab. And so I say this to say that as we talk about this during COVID-19, there are a lot of people that are going to be out of work and they need to be retrained. Everybody is not going to be savvy enough to be trained on how to build an app or website or to work virtually for that matter. Biotech and their workers have been considered essential workers. So I think that's speaks for itself as far as the resilience of our industry, the need for our industry, and the possibilities for our industry. With people like, or schools like Jefferson University, or I want to say North Carolina, University of North Carolina, one of those schools down in North Carolina in the Research Triangle. That's where your Fujifilm and Biogen and some of the other biotech companies are at. They actually have a biotechnology program. They've had one for a long time. And then other than that, Maryland, I think it's University of Maryland, Baltimore County, has a great biotech training program. So I said that we're all about that. We definitely need that. A lot of our workers with this skill set are retiring. The baby boomers are leaving and they're taking that skill set with them. And so this is the perfect time that we need to come together, not only in the commercial markets such as Lucas Pi Bio, but working with cities like Philadelphia, the state of Pennsylvania, or even getting up to the federal level and talking about this in the open and trying to figure out how do we finance this retooling and retraining of our community, especially our community of people of color, Black and brown communities.
Powerful stuff, powerful stuff. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions. So if we could take the next 5 minutes for just our panelists. If any of you have questions for one another, we'll reserve this time for that. And then after that 5 minutes, we'll open it up to Q&A for all of our attendees.
Gotcha.
So sort of as a primer, Tia, if you could ask Tomo one thing about, you know, the work that he's done in his experience in Tokyo, what might that be?
I would like to ask is how was Tokyo managing and making sure that the bridge is being made between academia and the commercial market in regards to life science and the respective assets that may come out of the university system? Meaning, do you guys have this bandwidth to keep that communication going and actually helping academia bring those assets to the commercial market in Tokyo?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very interesting. I'm now working in the University of Tsukuba, which is the greater Tokyo area. And of course, the population is so great. And of course, the many universities existing too, and many companies too. And somehow the manufacturing facility itself is outside of Tokyo area because of the countryside is easier to get a huge land. And also my friends and working on the manufacturing side is because I'm from the engineering side, is now working close to University of Tsukuba because we have more land outside. And but for through the education, like after the graduation, 20 years, I realized I'm from the academia and my friends are working on the industry. And when we have a chat, that's okay. But when I talk about our job, it's pretty much difficult to communicate. The language barrier is so big because the terminology itself is different. So I decided to have the booklet, the glossary, to translate Japanese into Japanese, or like 3 digits, three well, abbreviations like well, GMP, GCP, or something, something, something. All most academic people like POC means just the animal level, or some model was cured by this drug. That's it. But for the industry people, POC means the phase 2, right? So something like this. We still have big gap, but we started to have those kind of communication. So through our session, we try to train scientists how the industry people are thinking, the way of thinking, and also understanding. And of course, from another side, academic people will educate industry people how the academic people are thinking. And due to the, probably that's very special situation in Japan, we don't accept the people from industry to be like a university faculty, or vice versa. But myself from industry to academia as a faculty member, and something some changes are happening. So we try to accelerate those kind of activities.
Good. Okay. Good. Look, we still have some trouble in the U.S. too. That's why I asked you that question. we have the same thing.
Now, well, actually, the grocery itself, our NIH AMED is translating that into English with the NCATs at NIH. And I think Idris from the EU is also joining that program. So hopefully we can have the global understanding of the how we can fill the gap between academia and the industry in life science.
I mean, if I can make somewhat of a comparison as well here is, working as a consultant and working with government contracts, there's also this sort of communication gap, because what you have basically here, and if you've been watching the news, especially when it comes to COVID-19, is, the winners of the big grants are basically those folks who basically, it's almost like winning a lottery, right? Because the reality is that, there could be hundreds of folks, organizations that submit a grant, and immediately some are dismissed because they're not sort of formatted the correct way, or they're not written the way that is in the language of the specific organizations they're writing to. Because again, you have like BARDA, you have like DARPA, you have the NIH, then you have the DoD, you have all of these folks, and each have their own ways, own separate requirements for writing a proposal to them, and you can spend weeks writing a proposal, and it's rejected because of an oversight in terms of language. And I don't mean like English or what, but I mean just the way you say something not according to their standards. And so when it comes to funding and supporting organizations, some of which you've mentioned here, trying to make synergize sort of that language even within the scientific community, it's a daunting task. And that's why organizations like when I'm where I'm working now exist, in order to try and maybe facilitate some of that that synergy and make sure that there is at least the A connects to B. Because when you're talking about trying to help, especially in COVID-19, and you have some great ideas and you can't make it through the model, you can't get your voices heard, it can be very, very frustrating. And so I just imagine even smaller organizations in a community level trying to just be recognized for their efforts and trying to get something done, because everyone has an idea of how to actually make a difference, right? But it's the ones that actually can get through the noise and get their voices and get their points to wherever they need to get it to is who's going to be recognized and get that support. So with Phil, what you're doing, I mean, I'm sure that you run into barriers that you can't explain as to why these barriers exist, but they do exist, and it's very odd. I mean, Tia, I mean, considering something like Lucas by Bio, I mean, think of it as an organization like Lucas by Bio should not have any challenge whatsoever in getting recognition and support because of the mission and purpose, right? If you think about it, we're all trying to get to a point where we're trying to make solutions for problems that exist. But it is amazing the layers of challenges that exist to actually get to the point that you're trying to get to. And so, from the organizational level of that large, just imagine the smaller community-based organizations trying to get somewhere, and getting funding. When we're talking about something like what, $50,000, for example, how many companies last week was announced $2 billion or $1.95 billion. And I mean, it's amazing. And trying to get $50,000, you're thrown in the same boat, the same level of challenges to try and get that. And so really it's how do you get through these muddles, get through these noise to really get some help and get some support. So, we really need to be able to, organizations that have the power and the ability and the connections to do that, to get through these noise, to get some support. So certainly I'm with anyone, and if any one of you, wants to join me in helping to resolve some of those, I'm happy to have conversation. But from where I stand, I'm seeing it every day, and it's really something that is frustrating to look at, and and try to come up with some solutions for that.
Exactly. I was going to say with Life Sciences PA here in Philadelphia, they're a trade organization for all the life science companies here. But what people may not recognize is that they're also I guess you call it a lobbying or advocacy organization where they work with the city, the state, and federal government in educating on what's going on in biotech and what are the needs. And it's very, very interesting that we focus on high prices with the drug makers and access to patients, but what people don't know is the cost that the federal government charges drug makers to keep drugs on the market, in the commercial market here in the US. We have fees, particularly in biotech, that you pay for each product in the market annually. That fee is anywhere from $1.5 million to $2.5 million, and that's bare minimum. If you have to do an extra study to monitor what we call adverse events or negative things that may happen when a patient is taking your drug, they call it phase 4. That is extra money on a company to do that per the requirement of FDA, but on that company's dime. So there are reasons that these drugs cost a lot of money. They are not cheap to make, but we also have to pay these fees between $1.5 million to $2.5 million to the government in the commercial market every year. So Gilead, listen to this. Gilead in 2019, it's a big biotech firm, commercialized 9 drugs in 1 year, right? That's already crazy, right? That's super hard to do, right? And most of it, they did it with partnerships and buying people out and taking it over as they was in the process of getting into the commercial market. But more importantly, times that, let's just make it at the top, times that 2.5 million times 9 that they had to pay in 2019, that they got to pay this year, they got to pay next year. For as long as their product is in the US market, you have to pay that fee. These are the things that we have to get out in the open with, speaking that language and making sure that everybody is on the same page of what needs to be done, how we need to get there, how do we involve a whole diverse and inclusive community to retrain the workforce and also increase access, and more importantly right now, make that drug for COVID-19, whatever it's going to be, accessible to the global economy, right? So these are some of the things that we have to think about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Powerful stuff being shared. I think we might just have to turn this into a series because I don't think we have enough time to cover everything that needs to be covered. But Tia, like you said, Gervan, like you said, it's about access. It's about fueling the innovators, right? I mean, you all are doing the work, and to do the work, you need that fuel, and that absolutely is money. So that's something that needs to be fixed to create a more inclusive ecosystem for sure. So let's open it up to Q&A for our final 4 minutes. Emily, do we have any questions in the chat, or is anyone's hand raised? Would anyone like to ask Tia, Tomo, Phil, or Gervan a question? This will be a rapid fire Q&A.
Yeah, guys, feel free to throw anything in the chat or unmute yourself if you're so inclined.
Don't be shy.
And if not, Phil, feel free to jump in. I don't know if you have a question you wanted to ask as well.
Not more a question, but like we hit a lot on barriers and barriers between like barriers being 100 feet tall to 5 feet tall. Like I think one of the things that is apparent or that should be more apparent is collaboration. We also talked about being able to speak each other's language, not specifically, you know, Japanese to English or English to French or French to Spanish, but being able to collaborate in a way that's going to benefit everyone. One of the other things that I've seen that is still kind of frustrating to me is that a lot of people will be more than willing to step on one another's toes to reach their goal. And in the day and age that we're in right now, that's not the solution. That's more of a hindrance, and that's another roadblock to people being able to move forward. We did a study, we meaning the Science Center, eConsult, Chamber of Commerce, and University City District recently did a study on cell and gene therapy and connected health. And basically, long story short, that was a needs assessment study based in the Philadelphia region over the next 3 to 5 years of what different opportunities there will be from people who just recently graduated from high school to the PhD level, and there's everything in between. And one of the things that was just really interesting about that study was there is a higher emphasis on folks with master's degrees and above, which is fantastic. That makes perfect sense. I'm not going to be ignorant to the fact that if you need to do something at a company, you need to have certain credentials. That makes perfect sense. But moving forward, as things progress and move forward a little bit more like expediently, especially with what's happening right now, there may be other roles that we want to be able to support people with or put people through programs. Tia mentioned Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing. I got a chance to go up to their Springhouse facility, and it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's fantastic, to the point where, you know, that's the type of environment that we need to continue to expose people to, so they can get these ideas, so they can move forward, and they can put all the puzzle pieces together. And again, I'm gonna say this again, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Like I'm sure people don't know that, you know, that Springhouse facility exists, you know, in West Philly, in North Philly, and in Kensington, and these different like neighborhoods in Philadelphia. So I'm a Philadelphia dude, like through and through, and I want to be able to expose as many people, young to old, for and some of these possibilities that exist.
Indeed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil. It looks like we are up on time, unfortunately. I think this session was jam-packed with information, thoughts. I think we're going to put another date on the calendar. We're going to create an innovation bridge between Philly and Japan, and we're going to make some things happen to improve the innovation ecosystems around the world. So thank you to Gervan, thank you, Phil, thank you, Tia, thank you, Tomo. I've learned a lot from all of you. Hopefully all of our attendees were taking notes.